Okay. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Hear an echo.
Hang on, I thought I turned that on.
On February 4th, 2025. It's 6 p.m. Okay, good. With 3 or more members of our 5-person committee present, we have a quorum, so I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Kyle is absent. Member Bergman.
Present.
Member Clay.
Present.
Member Vicente is absent, and so alternate Kuhn will serve as a voting member if we're voting on things today. And me, Chair Mooney. Also present is a handful of folks from the Department of Public Works. I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourself really quickly.
Would love to. I'm Gray Milgard. I'm an associate civil engineer with the Department of Public Works, and I will be acting as the staff liaison for tonight's meeting. Assistant Director Kwok could not make it.
My name is Said Fakhri. I'm the new city traffic engineer. Came on board this Monday.
Oh.
So relatively not familiar with the city yet.
Welcome to the Lion's Den.
And I'm Kelly. I am into being the traffic engineering technician. I've been an intern for a pretty long time.
Can you speak a little louder?
I've been an intern for a pretty long time, but I've come to a good amount of the TAC meetings.
Kelly,
To be here.
what's your last name?
Abby,
I know you.
I know you too.
Strava famous. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed via Zoom. So if you experience technical difficulties, you can write the email that's up on the screen now, trafficengineer@cityofsanrafael.org. We will have open time for public expression at the end of the meeting. There's not too many folks here, but I'll make sure I leave 15 minutes or so at the end of the meeting. For those online, remember that you now must come in person to give public comments. We won't accept any public comments via Zoom, and you'll have 3 minutes to talk for those. So the first thing that we'll do today is approve the regular meeting minutes from October 2nd, 2024. The minutes were in the agenda packet. Do any of the committee members have any questions about the minutes or need any clarification? No. Do any members of the public have comments regarding the minutes from the last meeting? No. Hearing none, we could have an A or nay vote to approve those meeting minutes. So first, all in favor? We unanimously vote to approve those October 2nd, 2024 meeting minutes as submitted. Okay, on to our second agenda item is the selection of a new chair and vice chair for BPAC for 2025. The update to the boards and commissions policy that came a year or two ago lays out who does that sort of based on tenure. And so our next chair is going to be our current vice chair, Kyle. Mark Kyle will step up to be chair of the committee. He's not here, but he has accepted that role. And then our vice chair will be Sean. Assuming we vote on that. We vote yes on that. So does anyone have questions about that process? Members of the public have any questions about that? Not under our control, so I probably couldn't answer them anyway. So hearing none, we'll have a or nay vote. All in favor of voting Mark Kyle as chair of the committee for a year and Sean as vice chair, say aye. Aye. Okay, we vote unanimously for our new chair and vice chair. Thank you very much for serving.
And thank you to our outgoing chair.
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor. I'm still around. So next on the agenda item is the 2nd and 4th Street intersection improvement project update. So I'd like to call whoever is going to be presenting that from the city.
Absolutely.
Great.
Hello again. My name is Gray Melgard. I'm an associate civil engineer with the Department of Public Works here at the city of San Rafael. I'm also the project manager for the city for the 2nd and 4th Street intersection improvements project. So I'm here tonight to give a project-specific update in regards to this item. So just a little bit of project scope. We are looking at the intersection of 4th, 2nd, Marquard, West End, Miracle Mile on the western side of San Rafael. The project is looking to reconfigure that intersection for a number of goals, improving safety for all users, improving the pedestrian and bicycle experience while still maintaining critical access in the area, as well as just improving the overall gateway experience to and from San Rafael on the west end. I also want to make a note that this will act as the final completion component from the 3rd Street Improvement Project, which finished late 2023, I believe. So that final connection along the southern boundary of the project. A brief project update. This project does have federal funding as part of the One Bay Area Grant, or OBAG 3. That's approximately $3 million for the construction only phase. There is some ongoing conversation with our local and state leaders on that funding, and the city will continue to have those conversations as we approach that timeline. In the meantime, we are going to continue with the design effort to the extent possible on the project, just as we continue those conversations. So on the screen now, this is the 65% design for the project. So 65% is just a reference to how complete the design is at this current time. This was the last major project production for this item. And in between the 65% design, we've gotten environmental clearance with Caltrans for the project, and now we're moving towards the 95%. And there are 3 kind of major considerations that have been brought to the attention of the project. So the first, number 1, 2, and 3, the first is the access to the existing driveways on the north boundary of the property. Number 2 is the potential closure of the 2nd Street westbound left turn lane into Marquard and West End Avenue. And the third is kind of to the location and alignment of the north-south pedestrian crossing for the project.
Can I ask a question? Are we going that way towards San Anselmo? I'm very.
Yes. Yeah, so north arrow down in the bottom right. So north is kind of to the top left of the screen. So east is off to the right. West is kind of off to the left.
North is wherever this is going, unfortunately. Thank you.
Yes. So here's the latest concept design for the project. So again, those 1, 2, and 3 items, and we're going to drill down into each of those a little bit more. And I'm managing 2 screens here, so going back and forth. Okay, so number 1. Maintaining existing driveway access. There is existing driveways on the north side of this existing, what I'm calling a slip lane, that need to be maintained access to during the course of the project. The city is looking at proposing a quote unquote business access only lane. So really trying to implement traffic calming measures to limit mainstream flow from entering this lane, and really encouraging folks who need to travel from westbound 4th Street onto Miracle Mile to stay and travel actually through the intersection. So different traffic calming measures could be appropriate there. A couple of things I want to point out. We have this new gateway potential area. So new gateway design for the city is up for conversation. And in this instance, both of these travel lanes, the one for the business access and the travel lane into the intersection, are signalized and would require a stop for vehicles to allow a counter movement for pedestrians and bicyclists. Number 2 is the 2nd Street westbound left turn closure. So we are looking at, in particular, this existing left turn closure being removed. Geometry-wise, that allows the creation of a pedestrian and bicycle refuge in kind of conjunction with item number 3, that crossing being on the east side of the project. I do want to make sure to point out emergency vehicle access would be maintained for Marquard. So that is this mountable curb down here on the south side. So vehicles would still enter and make that turn for emergency And we are coordinating with PD and fire for that. So making sure that is still happening. The major driver for the conversation around the left turn lane is a reduction in conflict points between that movement, between vehicles traveling east-west on West End, as well as bicyclists and pedestrians either on the two-way bicycle track or at the intersection across Marquard. Overall, looking for a reduction in delays across peak times with the elimination of that left turn conflict. In support, as we have this conversation around the potential closure of the left turn lane, the city has had Kimley Horn, who is a sub-consultant for the designer for the project, CSW, produce a traffic analysis and traffic study that is looking at overall all three cases, kind of combined into one, but more specifically looking at the potential delay and impacts to traffic as it relates to the left turn lane being closed. So we are still awaiting the final completion of that memo, but I just grabbed a couple of snapshots from our conversations. So on the left, you'll see this is the potential rerouted opportunities for people who might normally take that left turn lane. So either turning early onto West Street and then making the way around to Marquard, or traveling past the intersection, turning onto Greenfield and coming back up West End Avenue. On the right, you'll see that's the anticipated peak hour vehicles for the left turn lane. So the city maintains MyoVision cameras specifically at this intersection, so we get daily traffic counts. So that was the data that was used to support the analysis done by Kimley Horn. So this is kind of the anticipated split of where vehicles would be impacted and which direction we could anticipate them using on either side. Something that I just want to mention, because of those MyoVision cameras, we get overall snapshots of the intersection. And so this intersection as a whole is seeing approximately on average about 30,000 vehicles over a 24-hour period. So in conjunction with number 2, number 3, that potential left turn lane being closed allows us that option for the crosswalks to move to the east. The biggest conversation around this is when you have these pedestrians over on the east side, you have the opportunity for corresponding vehicle movements through the intersection. So in this case, it would be the vehicles moving on and off 4th Street. So the left turn headed eastbound, left turn headed eastbound onto 4th, as well as the right turn coming off. So the idea, and this is all conceptual at this point, so further design considerations. The idea would be for pedestrians to make the crossing north-south, basically up to this triangle, pause while that traffic is moving, and then make a secondary motion if they were going towards the very, very top of the intersection, to make that on a second stage. This closure, this movement also allows for a couple of things on the West End side of things. So the potential to restore the through movement from West End Avenue, basically across the intersection with Marquard and back onto 2nd, also allows us the potential to maybe smooth out that eastbound merge onto 2nd with this.
What does smooth out actually mean?
Just geometry wise, yeah, move the movement of that vehicle.
Right now, they're taking
hard
a left turn
left turn.
and then a right.
Well, I remember Rafat saying that they're gonna have to get off their bicycles. I was like, yeah, that might ever happen.
Continue on, I just want to point out also these bike cutouts on the north and south side. So this is a picture from San Francisco along Mission Street. So basically a traffic technique to move bicyclists off the roadway and out of the way before making a left or a right. So something potentially similar here where we're moving people off the roadway before they have to cross.
So, could you go back to that for a second? I can't see it because there's a text box over it, but I assume there's also a crosswalk across to where the gas station
Yes.
is there? Yeah.
Yep, right behind there.
Yeah.
Yep. So schedule updates next step. So again, this is a federal project, so we are still awaiting the funding determination for construction. But in the meantime, we are continuing public outreach. So we have BPAC now. We also will have a community meeting specifically for the project on February 27th. And I would love to have everyone attend that, ask questions. We are also continuing our coordination with our utility groups. If everything comes together, we are looking at final project documentation sometime in fall 2025, and then construction forthcoming 2025, 2026. That is the end of my presentation, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Great. We will start with any technical questions or clarifications from commissioners.
Yeah,
Are there any as we go around? Go for it.
I was just curious about, you had what the logic was having the bike lane switch sides on the bottom. Like there's kind of three intersections, crossings. You just have the bike lane on the left side of the last one. I was just curious what the thinking was with switching it.
I will say again that these are just conceptuals,
Alright.
and so
It just happens to be on the
it's
left.
just me drawing it.
You're totally fine. I thought there was some intention
Yeah.
behind it, so
Final geometry pending official design. Yeah.
that's my only question on it, really. I love the carve out. It's such a smart idea, especially on that banked turn.
No questions from me. Very, very, very. Nope.
I have some questions.
Yeah, hit me. Let's go.
Starting with the business access lane.
Mhm.
Generally. In the early meetings, I would say sort of like the highest priority thing people were talking about is like, we don't want a slip lane right now. That is a launch pad as it goes by. Very dangerous for,
Siri's got the answers.
dangerous for people trying to cross the street right there. And so you said, traffic calming. I would like to hear more about how you will ensure, I mean, even if you, like, it almost looks the same right here,
Right.
nearly from this drawing. And so, can you describe some of the traffic calming and how you expect that would work and how that signal would work?
Yes, and I might actually turn to,
Yeah, Rich. So I'm with CSW guys, so thank you, Gray. And so there are different traffic calming measures you can do. And I'm sure you guys have seen some of them. Like there's the old school speed cushions. I mean, those are the bumps. Not a big fan of those. Make noise, but we're not in a residential community. But then there's other options of just kind of narrowing the road. And so your perception is that, hey, I gotta slow down, want to be safer. We can landscape in that area because we are trying to create that entry corridor, that feeling in there. So necking it down would help quite a bit, especially if we get a tree canopy or something growing up in there. Do recognize there is the big sign going across and that's moving as well. But there's all sorts of little traffic, different types of traffic calming measures that we can do in that area, which haven't gotten there to this point right now. We're really trying to figure out the overall geometry. And then you're right, we do have to look at, because that was a concern many years ago when we were working on this project. It's just how people are just flying right on through that area and not slowing down. And then that creates a threat to pedestrians or people are crossing.
So whatever design you have would be really to discourage anyone from using that other than turning into the businesses. That would be the.
Yeah, it's really to slow them down and make them feel that there's, you don't have that ability just to fly through that 30 miles per hour. So you're just, there's a whole bunch of different measures, again, what we can do. I mean, again, the worst in my consideration is always those speed cushions. You can do signage, you can do little lateral shifts in the road. But again, I think if we look at it from a holistic standpoint, creating landscape, islands in there or doing something to create that entry or that gateway feeling is probably the direction we're ultimately going to head, but haven't got there yet.
Is on-street parking going to be maintained?
Yeah, that's my question.
I will say there's an ongoing conversation about the potential for parking on this north side, but also looking at what parking options would be in that gateway area if we just wanted to do like temporary, depending on future development conversations or what that might look at. But for the most part, I think as of right now, there's a couple parking spots between these two driveways. And then parking actually doesn't pick up again until kind of down here. So with those driveway access points already in place, parking is somewhat limited as it stands.
Yeah, that's a good question, because part of the Third Street project is to bring some parking, because we're removing it one side and bring it all the way on over to that area. So that was something that was discussed in the past, and
So with westbound Fourth Street travel, you know, like I'm seeing this building with all the solar panels on the roof is Pond Farm, which uses their sidewalk. They've got like a, you know, an outdoor seating bench area. It's a single lane of travel on Fourth Street. And how will cars queue up to make the turn? How will the light work? How are cars going to queue up at that light when they're traveling westbound to either go into the business district or go into Fourth? Will that signal be at the same time for both of those lanes when it splits?
Yes, so again, some like final design considerations, but I think the idea is that both lanes would be stopped because you have the conflicting pedestrian movement that could be traveling at that point. And so you wouldn't want to let the business lane go and not let the right turn lane go. So I think it would be a joined kind of stop and go effort.
Okay, that makes, so you wouldn't queue somebody up waiting for that business district turn, which is good. Okay. The closure of the left turn pocket is something that we've talked about in this committee, and I think we sort of advocated for in this committee, if I were to summarize people's thoughts in the past. I like that. The concern that it makes is you have more traffic volume, westbound traffic on going towards the Miracle Mile. Turning on West Street was one of those traffic counts. Am I correct? West Street is the unsignalized. Because there's a signal on East, but West is not. And so my little concern is then you are having left turns on West that are going to be crossing the bike path, the two-way bikeway right there. Are there any considerations for things you can do to protect through going cyclists on that bikeway? Do you have anything in mind for that?
I think pending a conversation on the actual closure of the westbound turn lane, we would be looking at the adjoining intersections, so both at Greenfield and at West, to see again both traffic impact volumes and potentially what changes could be made. I know Greenfield's a very interesting intersection. So I do think the project would kind of sweep that up into its realm of just looking at opportunities for both sides, east and west.
Okay, thank you. My final question was the two refuge islands that you have, I think are a great idea. My concern, especially on the top one, you know, that's sort of what happens right now for the bicycle movement is what you, I mean, there's no green painted aerial, but sort of like if you were to do that on a bike, you would go mount the curb right there. And it's a harrowing experience with cars coming through the slip lane. Again, this looks like the slip lane, and I know that you're slowing it down, but is there any sort of like hard protection that you would consider including to protect that refuge island when you're sitting there with a bike and somebody's trying to drive through westbound? You know, like you're right on the side of the road as they're coming through onto this business lane. And I know you're trying to have people really slow down to the business lane, but if people are going fast, that is a very scary place to wait. And so I think that would be very important.
I just want to be
That one.
this one up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the one down below, I'm less concerned about because you're buffered. The one on the south
Sure.
side of the road because you're buffered by the whole bike path, which is nice.
So potential look into
Some like hardening of that. And I don't know for both of those how consistent it could be further along down the bikeway or the intersection with, what is that intersection in the middle of the bikeway? What's that road? G or something? There's it goes
Oh, a
up
couple
to a mixing
intersections, yeah.
zone, right? And I like how that mixing zone, it signals the through going rider that you're coming up and you're sort of into a mixing zone with people going one way. There's little aspects I don't like about it, like the giant poles right in the way, but you know, for the signal buttons, but I think it does a good job of slowing people down. And I wonder if that sort of like an elevated mixing zone could be integrated in both of those places. I just thought that worked well further on down. That was more of a comment, sorry, not a question. Should follow my own rules here. Okay, those are my technical questions for now. So now I'd like, I'd like to invite public comments. And then after that, we'll deliberate as a committee. So public comments, go ahead, Laura.
I have two things. One of them, I'm not the only one who doesn't read maps very well. And it would be lovely if you expect a meeting of the rest of us here. To put a couple of stores in there that are stores that we know,
Sure.
like the Ace Hardware store or Pond Farm, still a little new, but or whatever it's called. But it is at the actual start of that whole thing. But that really does make a big difference just to figure out where you're talking about. The other thing is, I've been dealing with disaster preparedness for a very, 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 very long time. And everything that you guys, not you personally, but you guys have put up is there for good. It's nothing that can come down. Like in the Larkspur Landing, you know, they have a thing going on the weekend, so they put up the poles, they take them down during the week so people can do whatever they do on their roadways. You guys don't have that. That's frightening. You know, just to anybody. I mean, these guys are definitely not going to be taking their bicycles when they're getting their families out. They're going to probably be taking a car. And that's a little too late to start seeing those things. So I would love to see something that isn't, quote, as permanent. And I've seen a lot of them like bent over in the intersections, and it just eats up car tires. You know, my guy said to me one day, you know, all of us used to always pay for people who got flat tires when you bought your tires from us. We can't do that anymore because Santa Fe is making it so difficult. We've got so many clients coming in here with holes in their tires. We can't afford that. And I know they don't say that to you, but they definitely have said that to me a number of times already. And I just find it that nobody's paying attention to the disasters. And they do happen, and we clearly had been watching them every night recently, and it's very scary. So, and thank you. And I love your first name.
Thank you.
It's a great name.
Any other public comment here?
I just had a quick question about turning onto the west. I can't remember, is that a super steep road and then they circle back around to the west to come back down onto Marquardt? Is that right? I think I've been up those. It seems like.
I can answer that,
Yeah.
having lived at the top of
You do?
Marquardt for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, you turn into West Street there. It does go up straight and then you take a right there.
Okay.
And it loops into Marquardt, and then Upper Fremont comes off of there too.
Oh,
So it's sort of, they all circle up. And so when I would do this, like when I would drive this, I would always turn on west, go up there, turn right, and then continue on Upper Fremont, which is just these
Okay.
houses off the map.
It's a teensy little road.
it is.
Yeah, those are all really small.
I mean, I
roads
thought
up
I was
there.
on a little road. They're really on a little road.
Yeah, they're like hard to drive,
And it
skinny
was
roads
steep.
up there. Very, very steep.
And your estimates for these, on the table, West Street intersection, so the idea of how many you think, or that the analysis says would actually go all the way down and come back Greenfield versus take West Street, that's what you're estimating.
Yeah, so that's looking at the peak hour vehicle traffic volumes that we got from the cameras and just kind of estimating the split, who would need to go where, just based on general land use for each of those.
But the comment about making sure that people are there and there's no light. They're gonna be watching cars and they're gonna go fast. And that bike lane is right there. So I think that comment about safety is super important. So.
One more, thank you. One more.
Yeah, I rode my bike. I lived in San Anselmo. I've ridden through this area quite a bit. San Rafael did a great job with that two-way bike lane that kind of goes beyond that Jack in the Box. And that's the way I'm going now, right? I don't even deal with that whole crossing the street at that Shell gas station. Because that intersection is really dangerous, and I really like how, you know, folks are trying to improve that. But I wonder if it just makes sense to not have bikes even go into that intersection and just stay on Second Street, go to that signal light after the Jack in the Box, and then cross the street. And then, you know, go to Forest Street or Fifth Street or wherever you're trying to go to. The other thing I don't like about going through that intersection, for me as a bicyclist, is I go down Forest Street, I turn left at that old Yardbirds, and I hit that intersection at Fifth Street where the blinking red lights are, and there's a lot of confusion there, just generally, you know, it's not your typical four-way intersection, cars aren't facing each other, so avoiding that whole intersection for bicyclists, I think, is important. And so ever since I've been using that newly constructed area and that signal light past the Jack in the Box, I always go through San Rafael now. I don't go by Scotty's Market. I don't go over the hill to Sleepy Hollow to get to Fairfax or any of that stuff anymore. Because it's so much safer to go on that newly constructed area. Just as people don't want to hear this, but as an aggressive bicyclist, when I was going through this intersection, right, I'm going down 4th Street, I'm approaching the Shell gas station. I would get either on the double yellow line or on the left side of the double yellow line as long as I could. And then once I saw a car coming, you know, trying to get onto 4th Street going towards East San Rafael, I would either go onto the sidewalk or I would usually just go onto the sidewalk to avoid, you know, that signal light and what people were saying before about how kind of dangerous that area can be to cross the street. So again, I just advise that, you know, bikers are gonna go there, you know, out of towners, they're gonna just do whatever they want, but I would encourage to just have signage say, hey, if you're trying to go over here, go this way, you know. Why cross the street when you know, you can just keep going straight kind of thing.
You're saying when you're going westbound, right as you approach the parking lot apron for the gas station, you cross over left, it's putting you against opposing traffic coming from westbound going east.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced that
That's a little
a
frightening. You
lot
know,
of
car.
times.
Yeah.
I'm coming out of the Yardbirds parking lot, it's, because you have to sit there and watch from behind the other cars to see who's coming, and thank God if they're having their lights on.
Yeah.
That is difficult.
And
Where
even,
is this?
even if you survive the head-on traffic, once you get onto that sidewalk where the push button is, you're pinched between a pole and half of the sidewalk when you're headed westbound, so it's pretty scary. Yeah, coming off of 4th going westbound, trying to make your way to.
To cross into the
Towards
bike
Miracle
path.
Mile, but to go left onto, onto the Brick Refuge.
Yep.
I guess my other kind of ancillary question is the Brick Refuge that is currently in place going to be taken out in all the proposed scenarios that you guys have?
Specifically in reference to this top triangle one.
The current one, the existing one on the.
Oh,
Yeah,
here.
that area, is that
Yes,
Brick
that,
Refuge gonna be removed?
that
from
would be
all the
removed.
different proposed scenarios?
yes.
Got it, okay.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? All right, let's get it to us to deliberate.
You guys do a great job talking. I don't know.
Save all that money from all the
I-
consultants that they paid.
I think that having that, yeah, making it safer by having that carve out on the top and then also by providing a little bit more buffer for it, because that makes sense when you're in the flow moving through the intersection, but if you have to stop there, then it's just kind of just a little bubble to hide out and.
That's asking for trouble.
Yeah, I'll echo on that carve out, the one you showed from San Francisco. I think that looks like the one to go from Market onto Valencia.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I took that one a lot when I lived there. And it works well in part because you still have bike lane sheltering you from the vehicles on Market there. So you're not worried about people like buzzing your ear on the left as you're sitting there waiting for the light to cross. It's other bicyclists, so it's relatively safer.
It's a little awkward.
It's still a little awkward. It's not
And you gotta be
ideal.
familiar with the area.
Yeah, it takes going through it a couple times to sort of go, okay, now I
Like
see.
going
what
right
you
to
do.
go left, and like, if it's like rush hour, it's kind of.
Yeah,
what to do.
but it sounds like what's contemplated here is not to have a bike lane proceeding on to that slip lane. That'll strictly be a traffic slip lane. So maybe that provides for additional latitude for a broader, bulb out and have people kind of come to a stop and turn 90 degrees to the left in preparation to cross. And so if there's enough space to work with there, that could help provide people a safe and more logical crossing pattern. And it might also help solve the ancillary problem of discouraging people from using the slip lane as a through lane because there's sort of the extra structure around it. And, you know, the natural flow of traffic would be from just to stay in the left side of the lane and to proceed onto 4th Street westbound.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think about how, if that slip lane would attract a lot of through traffic. I mean, how would that intersection operate with the new configuration and the signal? Is it, what's the level of service anticipated to be? I'm just wondering, it's like, is there incentive people to try to go around it and cut ahead of the traffic? Would they want to get out of that lane? Are they gonna, is there gonna be a queue there?
A specific level of service would be referenced in the traffic memo, overall picture, and then individual kind of conversations around it. So I don't have a specific answer for you. But I do know that the conversation that was had of make it more difficult to go through that business access only lane if you're
Yeah.
trying to get onto Miracle Mile. Make it worth your time or lack thereof to stay in that southern lane and actually proceed through the intersection.
I mean, I like the idea of narrowing it or somehow putting some kind of physical. I guess that's one of the things that if the on-street parking is gonna be maintained, it has to be wider. So I guess there's certain parts that probably don't have enough space to accommodate a parked vehicle, maybe between the driveways. And so that could probably be bulbed out, or so even if it's not continuously narrow, if there are, I guess you kind of like what you were suggesting, I think. Having narrower sections, so someone's not gonna speed through it in the same way. I do think that would be helpful. And I guess the only other thing I can think of, would it make sense to think about a raised crosswalk across there? I know you're saying that speed cushions are not great, but I don't know if something with a lower profile maybe, so it wouldn't create as much of a at least with sort of somewhat of a I just don't think signage alone is going to be enough to discourage people from doing that. I was also thinking about what Phil brought up around that turning onto West Street. And I'm just trying to, because there's no traffic controls there, right? So people are going to be waiting for a gap in the traffic. And once they get a gap, people go pretty fast in the other direction, and they're going to be going right through, and then they're crossing a two-way bikeway. And they'll be expecting to see bikes coming against them, but they won't be expecting so much to see bikes going in the same direction. And so, yeah, I'm just not sure what the answer is, because there's no place for them to just hang out before crossing the bikeway, because they'll be blocking the travel lane. Right, there's not enough space for a vehicle there.
On West Street, I do believe there is a pullout for the left turn. So I don't believe that individuals are stopping in the travel lane. Kelly, can you check that on the map for me, please?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, I think I just drove it last night, actually.
Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah, there's a left
can't
turn pocket
do
to
a
make
U-turn
that
there,
lane,
yeah.
so you're not blocking, you know, when you're westbound on 2nd Street, you're not blocking the flow of traffic.
Right,
as you
right,
wait
right.
For the turn.
No, I mean,
But
I mean,
still is, yeah,
I mean, like, once you've made the left and you're trying to cross the bike lane,
yeah.
if you have to yield to a bicyclist, you're
Oh,
gonna be
yeah,
blocking the
there's
travel
no-
lane.
I see.
Yes,
Right.
got it.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so I think people are more likely to speed through it because they're having trouble finding a gap from the traffic. I mean, I guess maybe they just wait for the signal.
That is the current condition right now, right? This
Yeah.
is what
Yeah,
I brought this up when the bike lane was built.
Yeah.
This is just adding more traffic to that lane, you know, because, go ahead.
I was
Yeah.
just, we do have April Miller, Director of Public Works on the line.
Oh, sure.
So if April, you want to weigh in at all from the 3rd Street side?
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in. So, I mean, everything is a matter of, trying to figure out what the least conflicts are. So what's on here is showing the number of vehicles that we predict that are going to be making a left turn from the left turn pocket on West Street. What isn't shown here is the number of vehicles right now who use West Avenue and create a conflict at Marquard for all of the bikes and pedestrians that are at that West End and Marquard intersection, which we don't have the numbers written here, but I would say is significantly higher than 23 evening or these peak hour volumes that are listed here. So as everything is a trade-off in what we do, I guess I'm just saying, wanted to add in that the West Street left turn is significantly less conflicts than the West End Marquard.
Mark, got a stop sign.
At the stop sign and
Yeah.
how in the current configuration, how the bike path crosses there.
Yeah.
So by removing the left turn pocket and moving the vehicles to West Street, there's less people making that turn versus if it was open, we would have people doing the left turn there at Marquard, and we'd have people from West End likely going through there to merge onto Second Street. So it'd just be more conflicts.
Thank you, April. Anything else, Barry?
I don't think so. No, I mean, I think it'll certainly be a big improvement over what we've got. So I appreciate all the work that's going into this and yeah, looking forward to seeing it advance.
Thank you. It's been fun, interesting to watch this project as it's evolved over a long time. You know, we've seen it a bunch of times and at other meetings. I'm nervous with your talk about federal funding and what that might mean to the project, but
That already.
lots of people, they thought they had a lot of things the last couple weeks that have gotten pulled back.
Yeah.
I didn't know there's, it's not in the power at all, and I'm glad that you're continuing working on the plans, but it makes me nervous. I was thinking about the comment about, traveling east-west through town and the routes through town and sort of how this fits into it. And you were talking about now you like to go on the bikeway and why would you even go on Fourth? I do think it's worth putting this into perspective and remembering that we don't have a completed east-west crossing through San Rafael. It just doesn't exist. There is no east-west bikeway. There's the previous bike and pedestrian master plan, talked a lot about either fourth or fifth. I think that will likely be a huge topic, and the current one we do is sort of how we want to route people, because now we have this great bikeway too, and there are the possibilities to connect it through Gerstle Park on First Street, through Albert Park, by the community center, on the Mahone Creek Path, which is other uses now, but it is. I think this also just goes to prove that we really need to prioritize and figure out this east-west connection. And this is like a linchpin intersection of that. For now, the east-west connection, we are talking about going through downtown. You still need to do this intersection because lots of people go to downtown, and you should go to downtown on your bike, and all those businesses that are right there, Ace Hardware and Pond Farm, right on that stretch. I do that all the time. That was previously part of the Safe Routes to School route, was going through that intersection. The most recent maps have now changed that to go down to the Shaver whatever that raised pedestrian intersection one is that crosses. I never remember the name. Comes out at Johnny's Donut.
Shavers where the Second Street.
Bikeway crosses.
ends, right at Shaver, that's correct.
G Street is the Johnny.
And so I think it's all part of it, but no matter what, that connection is going to be important for bikes. There's a bike shop along that stretch of road. I guess maybe it's closed right now, but there has been a bike shop for a long time and will likely be a bike shop again. And Pond Farm, so there are businesses that bikes will have to access because we ride our bikes to places, not just going through. But it's good to think about it and remind us how important an intersection like that is. Okay. Other things, I think, as I've watched this, I love seeing the left turn pocket removed. I think I like the novel thinking of having still access to emergency vehicles as they come through there if needed. I totally understand April's points about West Street. I do think the difference is Marquard has a stop sign and people are going slow and bikes are going slow through Marquard, where West Street is right now. You just keep going and you cross the street, and those streets are already a bit of a problem, both east and west, because people coming down it's a very steep street coming down. and you nudge out into the bike lane just to see the traffic when they're making turns anyway. And so it's difficult to do. And so I hope there could be creative ways to encourage motorists to look both ways for bikes, to, you know, make sure there's signage for bikes on the bike path going by west, be like, hey, someone could be turning right in front of you. But I think that's sort of like a solvable issue, I hope. Through it all, I'm very worried by what looks like a slip lane to me. And I know it's a, you know, a business activity lane, but if I were to say the number one complaint through the whole process is like, we don't like this launch ramp of a slip lane through there. And that the diagrams look like a launch ramp of a slip lane. So I think the most important thing would be these traffic calming, traffic hardenings. You know, we had huge public input on this project for the last year, lots of people, and that is like the thing they say all the time. So I think that is like the most important thing in my point to keep my eyes on.
Well, actually,
I think
speaking
that's
about, one more thing about that, I guess, is, are there a lot of trucks that need to go to those businesses? I don't know what kind of maneuverability they need and how much that influences how much narrowing or.
Yeah, we looked at like a garbage truck going through in there, and that was like the largest vehicle that we were doing our turning movements on and figuring out how they can still navigate in there. We have looked at it. I mean, like I said, we've been doing this for a while. We've looked at a lot of different iterations, including raising that slip lane area like a few inches and creating a different texture to slow people down. Yeah, it creates drainage issues, but yeah, we've done quite a bit into that. But the garbage truck is the largest vehicle that we've.
I mean, I guess it always put multiple curbs or something if it was to make it a little tighter, but.
Would it be possible to program the signals there, so it's like stop when you need both of them to stop, and then have it just be a flashing red for that lane, so it's always a stop sign effectively? Would that accomplish what you're trying to do? So instead of being like ever being green there, it's always acting as a stop sign for that slip lane.
I think that's a further design consideration, definitely, as we look at the traffic calming on the physical side, also looking at the signal timings and light control and seeing how, if we want that as a flashing red, or if we really just want it to stay red when everyone's red and then only allow green on certain movements, but definitely a consideration.
Great. If that's all we have for the comment, I'd like to invite a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Seconded. We got a second. Okay, so now we'll vote to accept this report with I think we're just going to receive and file. Is that the language we're supposed to use? We'll receive and file this report. So all in favor? The committee votes unanimously to receive the report that was called the 2nd and 4th Street Intersection Improvement Project Update. Next on our agenda is the staff liaison report. Do you have anything to?
Also me again.
Okay, all right, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So I have a couple specific items and then some general overall just updates for this. So first one, Assembly Bill 43 AB 43. So some additional outreach efforts have been coordinated with BPAC, also the Police Advisory and Accountability Committee, PAC. That was in January 2025. We have our ongoing website and online survey, which I believe is the QR code in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Basically, this is looking at reducing speed limits in downtown San Rafael. That recommendation will go to City Council on February 18th. And we will continue to engage with the community after that through our input form, and also start looking at potential speed limit reductions in other areas outside of downtown San Rafael. So I also have the map here. So this is just the map of the proposed speed limits for downtown.
When was this proposed? To the public?
I'm afraid I do not know the answer to that.
We heard it also at our last.
Yeah.
It was
That's
October.
our last meeting. I'm talking about for the public.
Yeah, I can weigh in. So
Thank you.
yes, it was presented at the October BPAC, and like Greg mentioned, it's been presented to PAC in January, and so then it'll be at City Council in February. So those are the times where public outreach and comments can be provided.
And I'm talking about the rest of the public. I understand what you're saying, because I've gone to those meetings, but you have a huge public that generally doesn't always know about these things.
Yeah, I know we're answering questions outside of the presentation, but I just want to add that the comments can be made at the city council meeting, and that is where comments can be made. This is an assembly bill, and we're following our engineering and traffic studies and our reports and all of the speed counts that we've done. So we're just following the different state laws for this. So please provide, I'd recommend going to the next city council meeting.
And I do have a couple items, so if I could get through all of them and then just go through.
Yeah.
Okay, Raphael Meadows South Marydale project. So this is at the Smart Civic Center in San Rafael. So this is looking at the introduction of a multi-use path on the south side of the Smart Tracks. This is once again a federal funded project. So we have initiated those grant agreements with the Federal Highway Administration and Caltrans, hopefully anticipating those grants being signed shortly. Then moving on to topographic survey to help support design work and ultimately the release of an environmental and design request for proposals for the project. Spinnaker Point traffic calming pilot. This is more of an FYI that this community feedback, which is a QR code, is still open. And this will be a future BPAC item. Some additional updates. So transportation projects, got a lot going on. So the citywide bicycle and pedestrian plan update. The consultant was awarded at City Council back in December. They're currently in the collection, documentation, and data phase of the project. Los Gamos striping, we've received some feedback on the bike lane and we'll look for modifications here in the spring. Lincoln Avenue, the consultant was awarded at City Council as well. Currently kicking off designs for the 65% PSNEs, plans, specifications, and estimates. And then the Point San Pedro Road joint slurry project with the County of Marin. Say that 5 times fast. That's currently estimated for 2026, and this will be a future community outreach effort specifically for that project. Couple of funding updates. So the city did apply for the Transportation Authority of Marin TAM Safe Pathways to School. So that was the 4 projects listed there on the screen. We also had the 4th and Tamalpais, which is the north-south gap closure greenway project for the State Active Transportation Program, ATP. That grant was actually submitted back in June of 2024, and we're anticipating an award date in June of 2025.
We got these.
We're anticipating these. These are just things that have been applied for, have not yet been received. Yeah. And again, just general uncertainty with funding for some of these, but just wanted to keep an update on all that. That is it for the staff report.
Great. Do we have any technical questions or clarifications?
I was wondering who's the consultant that was selected for the bike and bike plan update?
Parametrics.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I'm just about ATP. I would be very pleased but surprised if you got funded. I don't know if you know how much the funding was reduced this cycle. It was reduced something like 75% over previous cycles because of the budget problems. So normally they give out something on the order of $400 or $500 million over 4 years that they awarded at a time. And this year it was 168. So no projects were awarded at the statewide level that scored below 96 out of 100.
Can I just add that project, we also applied for the RM3 funding. So there is 2 funding sort of like grants we have not heard about. So there's more money in that one. But yes, we are aware that the regional ATP does not have that much funding, but that is, I think, our top priority, if not very close to the top. So we will continue to seek funding if we do not get one of those 2.
Well, okay.
Question about the Spinnaker Point traffic calming. Did you say there's a further update coming? Is it okay, it's this future item. So is that, are measures ongoing? I see the strike the posts and the additional striping, is there current studies underway on that?
April, please correct me. The pilot is currently operating now, and we're just receiving public feedback on the current operation.
Correct. Yes, there's also a speed hump that was proposed further, let's see which direction, further west, closer to like the AJ Borough entrance, but we're having issues with getting a contractor on board because that's something we can't do in-house. So that was going to be part of the pilot, but now it's gonna kind of be a later pilot, maybe in a different location. We're not sure if it's gonna be here or somewhere else in the city that we're gonna pilot. But yeah, we have a consultant on board, and they've been taking counts and stuff, and then trying to see if which of those delineators is being hit, and just trying to figure out whether or not we're going to keep this, or if something like this is, something we want to do in other places. Quick build, items.
And I recall there are also some similar type items on Canal Street itself. Is that also part of what's being studied? Like, I think they were sort of some of these like soft strike lane dividers in a few spots, like the intersection Canal and Medway thing.
So there was, but those were installed just for an event. We were asked to install those at that location to prevent donuts during a certain weekend that we anticipated that was going to happen. So those were installed then. Fire came back and could not make the turn, and neither could the buses. So we are going to look at more improvements on Canal Street in other areas of Canal and in the city as part of future pilot programs. We're just kind of finishing this one to see if this type of thing works, and then if it works for our emergency vehicles. That's one of the big ones, because when they said they couldn't make that turn, we just asked them. They drove over the delineators, it just delayed them. So it's just something we have to go back to the drawing board and find other ways.
I was gonna ask the same thing. What were the exact reasoning methods used for the trial? Do you know? There's two different ones it looked like.
I don't know specifics, April.
I didn't hear what the question was, sorry.
What were the two methods that you guys are testing out? It looks like kind of like a roundabout.
We're doing a little traffic circle. I don't think that's the final photo. I thought there was some delineators or dots in there.
Yeah.
I think we put dots in but traffic circle, and then extending all of the medians with delineators, and then several of these crosswalks on the side streets weren't even striped. So we shifted the striping around a little bit to define those crosswalks.
And sorry, I know we're going to talk about this in the future. It seems like a cool opportunity for you guys to find out what methods work for speed easing. And so how are you guys going to determine the success of this again? Because I remember last time we were talking about it, the initial impulse to do this trial was just public complaints.
Yeah, we have a consultant on board, and I know they know how they're measuring it. And I honestly, I think they told me a few months ago, but the person who's working on it is not at this meeting. But so it'll likely come in April or June, and they can describe what metrics they use to study it, and as well as all of the feedback that we've received from the community on this. And then hopefully, the idea would be to be able to implement this on areas that, either they're, in the high collision network, or areas that we think needs to have traffic calming measures. It's not going to be complaint driven. That's not how the policy is going to work, but we do have our road safety implementation annual program. And so we do have money set aside to probably add in some of these quick build type items in a few locations in the city each year. So we're hoping that this is successful, and we get positive feedback from the community so that we can do this in more locations.
Great.
Beautiful. I have no questions. Any public comment about?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, how the Point San Pedro slurry project got pushed to 2026, because I know in possibly even the past BPAC meeting or the one prior to that is still slated for the spring of 2025. Does it have to do with staffing?
So Santa Fe only controls half the funding. So it wasn't in the county's plan the way they scheduled out all of their paving on, I'm not sure what their lane miles are, like 700 lane miles. It just penciled out for them to be 2026. We had the funding to do it next year, but we have to do it as a joint project. It's way more cost effective. So we're working with them, and we're going to save our funding to make sure we can do it. But now this allows us some more opportunities to really study the striping to see if there's ways to, narrow lanes, add more to, maybe, I mean, I know we don't have enough space everywhere to do a bike buffer, but just really explore and think about ways we can improve not only the drivability, but, cyclists.
That's great. I do thoroughly appreciate the extra thought that would go into it. I love that. And then also the question, is the Marydale project, is that near like the Hill Business Complex? Or is that where they're gonna do a roundabout? Or is it near the smart train stop?
It is on the west side of 101 on
Okay.
the south of the smart tracks. So there's an existing, so this photo is if you're standing on the Civic Center Drive,
Right.
looking back at Smart, and that existing dirt path is where the multi-use would go.
Okay,
So south side of the tracks, west side of the freeway, coming underneath the freeway into Civic Center.
underneath the freeway into this.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're like at Civic Center looking. in,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So looking west right now.
Yes.
got it. One thing which could be completely different is just my thought that if they have this Northgate project where there's apartment complexes and they're gonna encourage people to have e-bikes with the Redwood Bike Share project. If you want people from that shopping mall to get to that train station with the Smart, they can either go all the way along Ranchitos and make a left at the bike path, or they can dangerously attempt to make a left-hand turn into the little apron that is a shortcut, so they don't have to double back on the path. So, for example, you're coming from Northgate Mall and you are traveling, I guess it would be southbound on Ranchitos. There's a little shortcut apron that on the left-hand side is a concrete apron. And I think it's onto Marydale, technically, or I don't know if it's Marydale, but anyway, when you're making that left, there is no crosswalk. There is no rapid flashing light like there is farther along the Ranchitos for pedestrians. And many times trying to make that left onto that apron, it's pretty dangerous. I mean, this is way down the road for the whole Northgate project.
The cemetery is like that Michael's where the Thursday Farmers Market used to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got my car stuck down.
Yeah, it's a difficult turn.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Yeah. That's all. I
Like
mean,
coming
it's
out of
not,
the century.
it's not really
Yeah.
relevant to the Marydale project, I would say, but I'm just saying for like way down the road, something to consider.
Yeah, that's one of the most dangerous turns on that. Like I'm in Terralinda and we go to the farmers market. It's an awful turn.
I'll ask you to show me that after the meeting.
I didn't even know
Absolutely.
this was going.
I can't.
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't, yeah,
Oh,
public
just one
comment.
quick
Go for it.
question. What is the timeline, now that the contract's been awarded for the bicycle pedestrian plan update? Do you know what the timeline is at this point?
Last one's like a year.
2
and a half,
years
right?
ago.
That's it.
2 years ago. was the time.
I would say a year and a half.
But I
Because
mean,
it's just an update.
that's the timeline for completion. I'm just wondering when it gets started.
The
Well-
project has
It
started.
has started.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was awarded, it's been started, but I think, our CIP document also shows that quarter fiscal year breakdown, and I think we have that conversation in there, for total length of update as well.
There's also there's a feedback form that's online.
There is, yes.
For comments about that I saw. Well, I don't know when it went out, but I happened to see it a week or two ago.
I just want to find that.
I don't know. I don't know, where I found it, I could tell you.
Citywide bicycle.
Yeah, but we can also, if you email the traffic, uh,
Is that you?
that is a combination of a lot of people. But if you email that, we can help forward that survey to you as well. And I believe that's on the front of the packet, the agenda
Okay,
packet.
I saw it.
Yep, from at the very top.
Traffic end.
Yes, traffic
I
engineering.
like that was it. And what am I asking for?
The bicycle and pedestrian survey form, and I will make a note for it as well to look out.
I can send it to you right now.
Thank you.
Hey, one
Okay.
quick thing.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner reports, right? So,
We'll do commissioner reports next, yeah.
Oh, it's next. Oh, well, he's talking about South Marydale. I thought I would just chime in. So I know people who take that Civic Center smart train. They get onto that platform, they don't feel safe there because it's just dark and there's, it's a little bit of a wet area and, you know. And so it's great that I think that they're doing that multi-purpose pathway, not only for the community to get to the Civic Center, but also just having a greater presence of people there. I think people will feel safer and more people will use the trains and, yada, yada. So, yeah. It's good.
There's also the new agriculture institute marine facility that they're building just down that road. It's gonna be a permanent open space market. So it'll be nice to access to.
Connected.
An open space market that the.
All right, let's keep going through a few more things. I don't actually think we need to make motions for, I don't think we have to do anything for these reports, right? And we just,
These are just
I think this
updates.
is just an update, so I
Yeah.
think we just move on.
Yep.
So the next item is gonna be commissioner reports, so time for a brief reports on any like meetings or conferences or ribbon cutting ceremonies that anyone went to. Does anyone, any commissioners have anything? I 2 weeks ago went to the smart ribbon cutting ceremony. Honestly, it was a very like joyous celebration. It was nice to see the support. It was huge. There were tons of people, 100+ people there. Lots of support from the electeds.
This is for the path.
This is for the pathway opening. Yeah, sorry, the pathway from Smith Ranch Road to the Civic Center is now opened. It was just nice to hear, from my point of view, all sorts of positive comments and support for that path from everybody. For me, it brought up at Smith Ranch Road, the city maintains a path along the creek. At Smith Ranch Road, it's back up. It's in terrible shape, absolutely atrocious shape there. It is like unsafe to ride. I tried with my daughter, crashed her bike on the bumps there. And so I think that was a very underutilized path historically. Now that it links to a major, awesome, very nice bike facility, I think that is something the city should keep an eye on. I hope it makes sense, the path I was talking about. It's like
Once you, like, when you're trying to get to the park, you finish this new path
Like a
and then it's.
back, yeah, it's like a
flooded.
back
Yeah.
road anyway, and it gets you out towards 101 again.
I did that with my daughter too, and
Yeah,
we made it, but it was.
it's a bad one.
Did we get a new bicycle?
What's that?
Did we get a new
I
bicycle?
mean, I get her new bikes all the time, but not because she crashed. That's more of a personal failing.
Won't do that again, though, I guess.
That's my only report. Anything else? Okay, with that, I think we'll move on. So the next thing on our agenda is open time for public expression, so you can address the committee about things that are not on the agenda. Again, reminder that comments can be 3 minutes long. The comments have to come from this room. We can't accept comments over Zoom, but you do accept written comments beforehand. I think now is a good time to acknowledge we did get a written comment today from a Kevin Coleman. He was commenting on Point San Pedro Road and the fading and lack of sharrows in the stretch basically in front of the high school, if I will summarize his streets. I think he said between Union and Marina Drive there. And he seemed to highlight there maybe are some sharrows that are gone. And he'd like to sort of see some green paint splashed all over the place there. And with that, so we say that to make sure we actually do read these comments that come in. So if you write a comment, if you're online, we will look at it. Any public comment from the room here?
I'll just piggyback on what you just read. Yeah, it would be good to get some markings on the on the road there in front of Santa Fe High School. Me personally, when I'm riding there and I'm basically trying to camp, I'm going towards United Market. I get into the middle of that road right in front of Santa Fe High School. And the reason why I'm in the travel lane a lot more than I probably should be is because it's just really rugged there. And so, it's just one of those things, you don't want to fill your brain kind of thing ever. So I usually ride it at night because there's less cars and I feel safer and I'm getting in the middle of that road. So that's just kind of how I'm riding that. The other thing, just also piggybacking about the smart pathway from Embassy Suites to Smith Ranch Road, that's great. I tried to ride that coming here and it was flooded right at the airport. It was flooded to the point where, it's like we're bikers or runners or something. We'll just get through it. I was like, no, I probably won't do that with the situation that I had. And so I was like, okay, well, I can, maybe break into the airport here, or I can go on the railroad track to get around this. So I just won't be the only person that's trying to figure out, other crafty ways to get through there. And this area is prone to flooding. I know we haven't seen it flooded before probably, but I have noticed that there is a lot of standing water in between the pathway and the railroad track. I mean, it's not a lot of water all the time, but I could just see how this could be a problem just in the future. And the reason why I mentioned this, I know this sounds like crybaby stuff, but the reason why I'm mentioning it is because it's right in front of the airport. And if you're coming from the Embassy Suites and you're taking the trail, it's basically at the very end of the pathway. So you get there and it's like, oh, I'm too soft-hearted to go through this water, so I'm gonna go all the way around kind of thing. And I just wonder, what people are gonna do in that situation. Are they gonna go all the way around, Old Redwood Highway and that kind of thing? So maybe just getting something on the side where it's just elevated and you feel like you can kind of walk up onto something or some sort of workaround. I think that would be good, those rainy winters that we might have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to hear that's already flooded. Remember, that was Kate Powers' mission was to elevate that path, a former chair of the committee. So,
It's great.
it didn't happen, obviously, but it was, she was, more concerned, I think, with sea level rise and stuff. And any other members of the public, any other comments? Okay, with that, I think we're adjourned early for maybe the second time ever. It's 7:12. Our next regular meeting is gonna be 2 months from now. I should know that date. Don't help me with
April
that date.
2nd.
April 2nd.
It's in here somewhere.
Be our next meeting. Yep, 7:12 and we're done. Thank you.
Here, here.